Hola muchachos, soy Umbrian Libres y bienvenidos a mi diario de aventura de Pokémon Violet, and no, I'm not going to do the whole thing in Spanish. I got to spend several hours with the game today, and I'm glad I did, because the game feels big, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it did have a bit of a rocky start, to be honest. The game started off feeling kind of slow, even though you get to choose your starter Pokemon fairly quickly and you're already catching Pokemon and building a team fairly quickly. It still felt very restrictive in the beginning. It felt like a tutorial section, which I guess it was, but then you encounter Miraidon, and after that scene, which again feels pretty slow, suddenly you're in a really vast space, and that feels a bit overwhelming. It doesn't help really that in the beginning there are quite a few instances of the graphics being janky. I don't really care about the graphics as long as they aren't distracting, but there were quite a few pretty distracting moments early on. The changing lighting, the changing shadows, both when I'm picking my starter and later in the beginning of the Miraidon scene, that stood out. And because the game was still feeling pretty slow to that point, it was not looking good. But then when we got to the more open section, not that there weren't graphical glitches then, there certainly were, but they didn't feel like such a significant portion of the experience at that point. And so it was much easier to let it slide and focus on the gameplay. I thought it was pretty cool that you get to meet the legendary. I'm guessing they're still legendaries, but it's pretty cool that you get to meet them really early on. You build a little bit of a relationship. Miraidon has total toothless energy, and it was really fun. And although we didn't really do much together in that scene, I enjoyed it, and I was surprised that in the end, Miraidon will travel with me, and ultimately I will travel on it. So I guess the thumbnail that I saw was in fact a gameplay thumbnail. It probably would have been a more exciting moment to realize that I can ride on Miraidon, but I'm looking forward to it. I haven't done any of it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. The battle gimmick, terastallizing, bit of a mouthful. I think I got that right, but yeah, not the easiest one to say, that's for sure. And I've only seen 2 Pokemon do this so far. Nemona's Pawmi and my Lechonk. And they get these weird hats, basically. Like, Pawmi got a light bulb, and Lechonk got, like, a diamond ring. And I get that these are to signify what type the Pokemon has changed to, because they can, in fact, change types, so I also deduced that one correctly. But it's just ugly, honestly. I do not like it. Not my favorite mechanic in concept, or, like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I don't quite like about it, but I can see the power boost plus type change side of the mechanic, like its role actually in battle. It could be interesting. Haven't had a lot of experience with it yet, but it could be interesting. I really appreciated how right at the beginning you get to do quite a bit of customization. You get to do your hair, you get to do your face, and you can edit your face in ways that I was not expecting for a Pokemon game, so that's pretty cool. And it seems at least that there's no distinction between boys' haircuts and boys' facial features and girls' haircuts and girls' facial features. I'm playing the girl, so I don't know how much the boys get in terms of like makeup, but at least in terms of the hairstyles, I do have some pretty masculine hairstyles as options, which is pretty cool. Pokemon is getting pretty close at being good on the gender front, at least for the player characters, but it does still need to work on the pronouns situation. In my case, it doesn't affect my experience, but just because I picked the more feminine profile photo doesn't mean that I necessarily want to be called Chi and daughter and things like that. On the options front, I was relieved that the sound mixing options are available right from the beginning, but I was disappointed that there doesn't seem to be a set battle mode. For the last several games now, I have been playing exclusively in set battle mode, and that gives me the difficulty that I like. That gives me the level of challenge that I enjoy out of Pokemon games, and so not having it is a bit disappointing. Maybe the game design is different enough that I won't feel like I need it in this case, but at least for now it does feel a little off. But I appreciate that the entry hall of the Academy is a giant library. There's a character that gives the impression that you can actually read a lot of books, and you can't. There is actually very few books that you can read, but at least the Pokedex is in book format. That's amazing. I know it's just like an aesthetic thing. It doesn't affect anything really, but I love it. On the Pokemon front, I'm ambivalent. I saw a lot of Pokemon that I didn't know about in the opening cutscene. Just kind of got glimpses of them, and throughout my gameplay I did encounter some of them, so I've seen a lot more Pokemon than I knew about before, and a lot of them, they just seem too natural, I guess. They just seem like cartoon animals with just not enough of the Pokemon spice. So like Tarantula, Flamigo, the Black Tauros, Skookabilly, like none of them really feel like modern Pokemon. And maybe they'll get better as they evolve. That's what I'm hoping for. So far, Shroodle and Cyclizard are the ones that seem a little bit more interesting to me, as well as the starters. The starters are pretty good. I haven't seen mine evolve yet, but the starters themselves are pretty good. I may have spoken too soon about Wiglet. It does seem to be, design-wise, it does seem to be Diglett, but a worm, but I think it's actually more like a shipworm, like a mollusk. And I saw that there are regular Diglett in this game as well, so it's not some kind of regional form that's actually a different Pokemon. So maybe it'll evolve in an interesting way. I will withhold judgment. The more kind of exciting, or at least intriguing Pokemon that I've encountered is this tiny little Pokemon with a coin on it. I think it was called Grimigol, and I haven't figured out how to actually interact with one. I've found 3 or 4 of them, and I was able to get their coins, but I was not able to engage them in battle to try to catch them or anything. And then the one that really piqued my interest was this Mecha Donphan that Arvin showed me. Now I'm excited. So I stopped playing basically right at the beginning of the treasure hunt. The, I think, official end of the tutorial section, when I'm allowed to just go explore the region and do whatever I want. And looking ahead, the game feels very big, as I said earlier, and I mean that both in terms of the area. The game feels very vast. It's the closest a Pokemon game has felt to real size. But the game also feels very big in terms of how much there is to do. In the section at the Academy, you're basically given 3 whole major objectives at once. You've got the gym challenge, you've got the Titan Pokemon, and you've got Team Star to deal with. Plus, of course, Pokedex. And I'm sure there's also a lot of other more minor goals that you can accomplish. So, feels like a lot. And it feels, at this point, maybe like it could be a bit overwhelming, but I'm excited. So tomorrow, the real adventure begins. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next chapter.